I didn't really know what love was about. And we were married for a little over a year, and I was actually sick of it because I was by then 19 and having a full-time job, plus fixing breakfast, lunches, and dinner, and cleaning our apartment. And my husband thought it was women's work, so he was no help. And so I went back home. By this time, my mom had taken my brother out of high school, moved her and him up to Crestline because he was in a lot of trouble in LA. So I moved back home, and it was just me and my dad, and it was like we were both living by ourselves, but we didn't really talk. And then was the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think it was in October of '62, and I thought we were all going to die. So I realized that it was Jan, my husband, that I wanted to be with when the world ended. So we got back together again. That was late '62, and then in September I had. Oh, and then in the next March, my dad died of a heart attack. He was 51. And in September, I had my first baby girl, and because I felt guilty about not having a relationship with my dad, his name was Lacey. He was a junior, and he hated his name. He thought it was a girl's name. I named my baby girl Lacey after him. And it was like the first time that Jan and I had something in common. We both were crazy about this little girl. And then we got along really good after that. And then then at that same time, he was learning how to fly. And in 1965, he was hired by TWA and was a flight engineer. And we moved to Kansas City for a couple of years. And there we had our son, Danny, who was really upset with me for having him in Kansas City instead of everybody else's born in California. And then in 1967, we moved back to California, bought our house in Huntington Beach, and everything was pretty nice for a bunch of years. We had these friends named Pat and Tom, and they both drank a lot, and they were over regularly, and Tom ended up dying of pneumonia, and then Pat and her kids were coming over every day, and Jan started drinking a lot. Pat and Jan would just get drunk a lot, and I was taking care of all 6 kids, hers and mine, and I got sick of both of them. I told Jan that I had an alcoholic dad. I did not want an alcoholic husband, and after 14 years of marriage, I just said I was through. So he moved out, and the same day he moved out, she moved in with him. And so he kept coming back and saying he wanted to come home, but he would say that I'd be standing in the driveway talking to him, sitting in the car, Pat was in the right seat, and he said, I want to come home. And I just wanted him to do something of some strength, something I could count on, but he never did. So then shortly after that, my second cousin, my mom's first cousin, came into my life. He was 19 years older than me, and I always thought he was kind of a hero all my growing up years. He always played Santa Claus at my aunt's and all this stuff, and he was my hero. Now he came into my life calling me Wonder Woman because of the way I was with my kids, and swept me off my feet. And then Jan and Pat got married in 1977, and I just went with Ed. And so Ed and I got married in 1978, and it was horrible. He was like a dictator, and 8 months after we got married, he told me, he said, you and your mom and your sister will always be special to me, but I just don't love you anymore, and I'm leaving. So he lumped me in with my mom and my sister. So then he moved him and his business up to Northern California, and then 6 months later, then he wanted me and my kids to move up there too. And meanwhile, before Ed and I got married, I sold the house that I had in Huntington Beach, took the whole thing, bought a house in joint tenancy in Irvine, and so then 8 months later, he was out. I didn't have my house to go back to in Huntington Beach where my friends were, my kids' friends were, and we had to sell the house in Irvine, and so we did that, sold it for less, we paid for it, and I moved up to Northern California with my 2 youngest kids because Lacey wanted to stay with her friends down here. She wanted to move in with her dad, and it gets red already.
To be continued.
Okay. I'm going to tell you how Jan and I got back together.
Oh, I want to hear.
Well, you can do that
shoot, next time.
Okay, to be continued. Sorry, I was trying to do the short version.